But I have to start with the NBA playoffs and specifically with the Golden State Warriors in game one. They narrowly edged out the Memphis Grizzlies in game one of the Western Conference semifinals yesterday in Memphis on the road, 117 to 116. In game one of that series, it's going to be a fantastic series. And obviously, that was all set up by that initial one game that set the tone for what I think this series is going to be. And normally, when you're watching playoff basketball games, because obviously in basketball it's best of seven, baseball can be best of five, best of seven as well. NFL it's just one. In the NBA, oftentimes most of the games there's only one side that feels a certain way after the result. There aren't really any moral victories, and most teams don't have multiple positives you can take away from games, whether you're on the winning side or whether you're on the losing side. But I do think that last night or last afternoon, there were a lot of positives that could be said for both the Memphis Grizzlies and the Golden State Warriors, and then some key takeaways. So I want to start with the Golden State Warriors from their perspective. So the fact of the matter is, this is a team that still managed to win game one of the Western Conference semifinals on the road in a hostile environment in Memphis, Tennessee, the former grindhouse, without the emotional services of their emotional leader, their emotional energizer, and their big brother in the middle in Draymond Green. So the fact that they were able to win that game outright after he was lost when he was ejected towards the end of the second quarter, that's a major accomplishment in and of itself. Anytime you can win a major playoff game on the road, technically as the lower seeded team, that's a major accomplishment in and of itself. The other thing is Jordan Poole. This is a guy who continues to emerge as a burgeoning superstar in this league. It almost feels reminiscent to James Harden when he was with OKC the summer before he was ultimately traded to the Houston Rockets. Now, the difference is, I don't think anyone necessarily outside of Daryl Morey saw this type of upside with James Harden. I think we're starting to see Jordan Poole might be one of those guys where if he was to be given his own team, perhaps he might continue to elevate his game. Because even since he has been kind of, if you want to say he's been demoted, quote unquote, to the bench, he hasn't reverted to bench type of production. This is a guy who continues to produce at a really high and a really efficient level. He led the Golden State Warriors yesterday. I was surprised that he wasn't actually the player of the game who normally receives the interview from the national television networks. That was Steph Curry last night. But to be honest, I thought that Jordan Poole arguably was their best player yesterday. He led the team in points with 31. He led the team in assists with 9. He led the team with shots made, field goals made with 12. He led the team in minutes played yesterday with 38. He was tied for the most rebounds with 8. He was tied for the most shots attempted on the team with 20. And he was tied for the most three-pointers made with 5. The guy was doing everything. He also had a couple blocks in there. And yet he was doing this all off the bench. And that's what's been most impressive is you're seeing that it doesn't matter what part of the lineup he's in, if he's a starter, if he's coming off the bench, he's continuing to contribute in a major way that's unparalleled in the NBA right now. What he's providing the Golden State Warriors is entirely unmatched in the NBA, and it is a huge, huge X factor and wild card. I don't even know if you can consider him an X factor anymore, given that he's been averaging for the postseason 22 points with 3 rebounds, 6 assists on 56% shooting, 49% from the three-point line. Incredibly high numbers. And again, the first 2 playoff games of his career against the Denver Nuggets, he dropped like 30 and 29. And then the first game on the road as a lower-seeded team, he drops a playoff career high in 31 points. So he's continuing to be a proven commodity in this league. That's number 2. Number 3, the reassertion of Klay Thompson he's really starting to find his footing again, both offensively and defensively. He's continuing to improve on both ends of the floor, especially, obviously, we've always known he's been a clutch shot maker. He put that on display again yesterday, hitting the game-winning three. So that's obviously a really good sign for the Golden State Warriors. Not only could this guy return mentally just to the court after being away for 2 years, but also in the biggest moments of their season, could he deliver the goods like he's been prone to do in the past? And the answer is yes. Now, I know that the caveat to what I just said, there's a counter argument saying, well, Jonah, he missed 2 critical free throws. No question about it. But he did give them the go-ahead three-pointer. I'm going to give him kudos for that. And that's just a major, I think, emotional boost that he provides. The fact that he is returning to that stable, reliable form is something that I think is a really bright spot if you're the Golden State Warriors. That's number 3. Not to mention he also contested Ja Morant's potential game-winning layup attempt. So he hit the clutch shot and he delivered the clutch defensive stop as well, doing it on both ends of the floor. They also out-rebounded the Memphis Grizzlies, who are the #1 rebounding team in the NBA, despite being undersized and despite playing without Draymond Green. And they still out-rebounded the Memphis Grizzlies by 5. That is a huge win on that checkboard, on that whiteboard for Steve Kerr and his staff. The fact that you've got 3 guards who are under 6'6", and either some combination of Jonathan Kuminga, Gary Payton, Juan Toscano-Anderson with Kevon Looney, and Andrew Wiggins, and they're still out rebounding one of the bigger teams in Memphis, says a lot. And we'll see if that ultimately makes Taylor Jenkins insert Steven Adams. We still haven't seen. There's still no Steven Adams sighting. It's like he's a Bigfoot. We just don't know where he is. We really don't know where he is. But that's besides the point. Finally, this is a Golden State Warriors team that's starting to return to their championship form. They are starting to reharness and conjure up that championship DNA that had been with them for 5 consecutive seasons. We kind of forget they've been gone for 2 years in the postseason. Now they've come back roaring in this postseason. They're defending at an extremely high level when they need to. That used to be their calling card, and we're seeing more consistent glimpses of that. And what I admire about the Golden State Warriors, not only do I love their personnel, I just think they're likable guys, but I just love watching the way that they play basketball. And I'll touch on that more in a moment. The ball movement, their movement without the basketball. I love their depth. Gary Payton, the second, I didn't realize what type of explosive athlete he was until he posterized Desmond Bane. Whew. The athleticism on that guy, he defends at a high level. So I like what they've been getting from him. And so I kind of was very impressed with the Golden State Warriors on a number of levels, because they didn't necessarily have their best games from Steph and from Clay, yet they still managed to win on the road. And I think every single player on that team plays with a type of poise, plays with a type of composure that emanates from the top. They see it from the top down. Their stars play with a lot of poise, and I think that's trickled down to every single guy on the team. So those are the positives for the Warriors. Now let's to the Grizzlies before I touch on the takeaways. Here are the positives if you're the Memphis Grizzlies. They got off to a much better start than they had pretty much in every single game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. They weren't sleepwalking in their first home game. They came out laser focused. They came out aggressive. They came out hungry from the opening tip to send a message that we're going to be in this series. And we're playing at home, and we are engaged. We're activated. We're ready for this matchup. And that was a really positive sign, because in pretty much every game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, they didn't come out quite as laser focused in the open quarter as they needed to be. That's number one. Ja Morant continues to play at an extremely high level. He's still a scintillating basketball player to watch. 34 points, 9 rebounds, 10 assists. And again, He's playing with moxie. He's playing with a brashness that can't be overstated, and it's justified because he backs up the big talk. He continues to run right up the chimney. He's looking for that smoke. He doesn't shy away from it, and that's the thing about the Memphis Grizzlies. Not only are they fearless, but a positive sign was they came out not intimidated against this Golden State Warriors team. They didn't fear them at all. Yes, they came up a little bit short, but the fact of the matter is they were in position to win this basketball game. They lost by 1 at home with the basketball with 3.6 seconds left. They just came up a little bit short. And the other positive for the Memphis Grizzlies is from Dylan Brooks and Desmond Bane, those two guys both scored in single digits. They were combined 3 for 13 from the 3-point line, and yet they still only lost by 1 point. Those two guys will likely shoot a little bit of a higher percentage from the floor. So there were a lot of positives for the Memphis Grizzlies. However, and this is what leads into the big takeaway. This was the type of performance from Jaren Jackson where if you're Memphis, you have to win this game. This was the Jaren Jackson game that you're supposed to win. He gave you 33 points, 6 for 9 shooting from the 3-point line. He's going to be that difference maker for the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, I'm not predicting that Jaren Jackson is going to ever eclipse 30 points in the series again. He's going to continue to be productive in the series. I don't think he's ever going to give you another 30-point burger in the postseason. And so if you're Memphis, you've got to find a way to win that game. When Jaren Jackson gives you that type of performance, you cannot let that type of performance go to waste. And unfortunately, they did. And it was to be expected at least one game in the series. He was going to have that moment in this postseason. It happened to come in game 1, and they came up a little bit short. That's a concerning sign for Memphis. And this is why ultimately I always kind of liked the Golden State Warriors just a little bit more than Memphis. As great of a season as they've had, everything just seems a little bit more fluid and a little bit more natural for Golden State, especially on the offensive end. The way that they create shots for one another, the way that they execute in their offensive sets, everything just moves a little bit more smoothly and a little bit more, again, naturally than I think than the offense comes for the Memphis Grizzlies. Both sides share the basketball extremely well. They distribute. The Warriors had 31 assists. The Memphis Grizzlies had 26 assists. So the Grizzlies still share the rock just as much as the Warriors. But again, when you look at Golden State, they just have more natural shooters that I think kind of lubricate the offense a little bit more naturally. And I just think when you look at the chemistry, when you look at the trust, their ability to execute, that now the Golden State Warriors, they got 3 lethal snipers. They got 3 lethal snipers and playmakers. I just think they're always going to be in a game. And so I just love watching the way that they play basketball, their movement without the basketball. There's a certain elegance and a certain gracefulness that they possess, and yet they still maintain a little bit of that dog mentality even without Draymond. So Memphis, listen, they're a very resilient team. They're going to continue to come back. They're going to rally just like they did against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think the problem is the Grizzlies have to play nearly flawless basketball to defeat the Warriors. Whereas I think Golden State can play subpar and still emerge victorious. And that's the big difference here. And so their shooting prowess just allows them to stay into every single game. So I know that this is just one game, and by no means am I saying or suggesting that Memphis is going to get swept. But I do think that this is a series that now favors the Warriors, and I liked them going into this series to win. And now it looks like it's probably going to be a 6-game series where the Warriors will win. But again, game 1 was fantastic, sets the tone for what promises to be hopefully a tremendous, tremendous series. And I cannot wait for game 2. That's going to be an absolute showdown.